Again, I have Meniere's disease. I'm an internal medicine physician, and I've been creating these series of videos talking about Meniere's disease and different aspects of it. And today I'm actually, or this little video haven't done in a couple of weeks, just because I've been having sort of flares and been going through a lot of different turmoil with the Meniere's. And so this one I'm going to actually talk about actually coping with Meniere's, or actually coping with any type of chronic disease. This video is actually maybe not very specific for Meniere's, but very pertinent to Meniere's, and it's actually geared for anyone out there who has a chronic disease or who has just suffered an acute devastating illness. I think it's especially good not only for the ill person or person with Meniere's, for example, with a chronic disease who just got diagnosed or is having a setback, but also for the family members and friends who are also there to support him or her. During this acute period, usually the first 4 to 8 months after the initial diagnosis or initial discovery of the acute illness, is just the absolute worst period. And I want to talk about how the different psychological ways of coping with this, and the different, basically 5 stages of grief, it's called, that everyone does go through, whether they express it in very dramatic fashions or very subtly. Everyone does go through this, and I was hoping that everyone has the social support to cope and maybe to accept their condition and maybe try to work with it. I'm absolutely not saying that you should just accept your Meniere's disease and accept the diagnosis and say, oh well, that's it, and just deal with it. And not look for a cure, or not look for some relief, or look for a satisfactory other diagnosis. I personally will always be looking for a cure or a fix or something to help me, and it's just part of my coping mechanism. But what I'm saying is that no matter what the final outcome of your illness, or how it eventually ends up, you need to deal with your symptoms and your illness, and you're only able to do this after you go through all these little 5 stages that are well known by all psychiatrists, psychologists, and only after you have some acceptance of your disease and your illness, then can you rationally and realistically and hopefully find some kind of solution or relief to it. So, going back to what prompted me to create this video at this point in time, is that, as you know, I was diagnosed with this Meniere's back in June of 2010, and ever since that time, and right now it's February of 2012. For the last 18 months, it just seems like such a long time I've had disease, but actually in relative terms of Meniere's and chronic diseases, it's not been that long. But the problem with chronic disease is that there's absolutely no relief of this, and there are good days and the very bad ones, but the discomfort and the pain and the constant ringing and just the bad feeling and just the malaise and fatigue never give away in Meniere's. And it never give the sufferers like a full, complete break at times. 24 hours a day since like June 22nd, 2010. Every single waking moment and every single sleeping moment, I am literally sort of, you could say, tortured by this constant ringing and this deafness and this sort of vague fullness just in this right ear, right head side of my head. And then also every couple days, every week, every few weeks, whatever, I get this confusion, fullness, nausea, vertigo, just feel overall awful, just not feeling well. And before this, I was fully healthy. I mean, I did 2 triathlons, mini triathlons. I was a very active person, rising in my work, doing very well. And then in nothing flat, one day, boom, there was the feeling, nausea, vertigo, and persistent ringing and deafness, and it's driving me crazy. It was driving me crazy, and this self-generated tinnitus, it's called, was going very loud in my head. So when I first got diagnosed with the Meniere's, it's the Kubler-Ross model, psychological model, and I went through all the 5 stages of grief, and eventually I accepted it after about 6 to 8 months of everything. And it's not really that I accepted the Meniere's, but then I just learned just to sort of deal with it, and I was doing better. And the symptoms were better, and I'd wax and wane, and I had these flares, but I'd learned to deal with them. and I keep searching for cures or solutions. However, life is dynamic, and the Meniere's is a chronic disease. So just this past January, just about a month and a half ago, in 2012, I started having tinnitus and ringing. This is my bad ear. I started having tinnitus ringing in the opposite ear. Okay, my good left ear, quote unquote. So I went for a series of hearing studies, and I started losing quite significant amount of hearing in the left ear to the point where I cannot hear people talking to me unless they're standing like 5 to 8 feet in front of me and they're speaking very, very, very loudly. Okay, I've ordered hearing aids for both ears now. I still have one on one ear. Now I'm putting in my right ear, even though this is my bad ear. I put it in my right ear just to try to drown out some of that tinnitus. And I've got this 20 to 25% hearing loss, along with 50% hearing loss in the right ear, and essentially I'm going deaf. And what is the absolute worst at this point in time is that now, instead of having just tinnitus in the right ear, I've got ringing in both ears, and it's going in full stereo. So I thought I was over those 5 stages of grief, and I was dealing with my Meniere's, and now I'm going through these 5 stages again. But this time I think it's going to be shorter. And this time, a lot of it is, I think, should be able to deal with it better, just because I think I know what to expect with this Meniere's. And I've just accepted that, not that I accept the disease, but that I accept that life is what it is, and I'm going to have to deal with it, however bad or ugly, or whatever the eventual outcomes of this Meniere's. Okay, so going through the 5 stages of grief, I'm going to point them out, and you can actually click on the information below, and you can see it. The first stage is actually denial, and a lot of times when a person comes out with acute illness or disease, so on, they say, "I feel fine. This can't be happening to me." Denial is actually it's a very strong and potent defense mechanism psychologically. Denial is usually only a temporary defense for the individual. The feeling is generally replaced with heightened awareness of possessions, and individuals will be left behind after illness or death. Okay. So, when I first came down with this in January this year, I was like, nah, I can't be having Meniere's either side. That's impossible. Even though 30% chance, nah, I can't. Second thing was anger. Why me? It's not fair. How can this happen to me? Who is their blame? Once in the second stage, the individual recognizes that denial cannot continue. And because of anger, the person is very difficult to care for due to misplaced feelings of rage and envy. Okay, and you're looking at others and you're like, everyone else is healthy, everyone else is doing things, why is it me? And the thing is that you have to really be careful during the anger stages to not project those feelings onto other people and to affect the other loved ones who are trying to support you and help you. And others can get hurt, and you got to be careful with the anger stages. And it's unclear exactly how long each of these stages will last, but everyone does go through them, whether it's very, very loud and expressive or very, very mild and subdued. They do. So the third stage is bargaining. Okay, and I've done lots of bargaining. I'll do anything for a few more years of just relief. I'll give my life savings if, quote unquote, whatever. The third stage usually involves the hope that the individual can somehow postpone or delay illness or death. Usually the negotiation for an extended life or extended period of health is made with a higher power, God, whatever higher power you believe in exchange for a reformed lifestyle. Okay. Probably going through part of that right now. I bargained. I did quite a bit of donations last year. I did do a lot of that. Psychologically, the individual is saying, "I understand I am ill, but if I could just do something to buy me more time, more health." Okay, so the third stage is bargaining. Fourth stage, depression. Now this is sort of the critical stage where things get difficult. In depression, quote, "I'm so sad, why bother doing anything? Well, I give up. I'm going to be ill for the rest of my life, so what's the point? What is the point of my life?" And, quote, "I miss my loved ones, why go on?" During this fourth stage of depression, the ill person begins to understand the chronic nature of the illness, and because of this, the individual may become silent, may become recluse, may refuse visitors, can spend much of the time crying and grieving, and this process allows the sick person to disconnect from things of love and affection. Okay, it is not recommended to attempt to cheer an individual who is in this stage. It's time it's an important time for grieving, and it must be it must be processed, and a lot of times other supporting loved ones want to help. They try to give their support, and it gets pushed away and it gets refused by the person going through the illness or the acute loss. And unfortunately, all you can do is just be there for them and try to support them. And it can last for a long time or it could be very short, but everyone goes through the part of depression. And then that's probably near where I am right now, or somewhere between bargaining and depression, right now, with the second loss of my hearing on the other side and going completely deaf. And then the last stage, the fifth stage, is acceptance. And it's saying, quote, "It's going to be okay. I can't fight it. I might as well do my best to deal with it." And this is the last stage. Only when individuals get to the stage do they begin to come to terms with their illness and their mortality. Okay, so those are sort of the basic 5 stages of grief. Once they get through these 5 stages of grief, there's actually, it's called a trajectory of grief. The grief can go up, stay the same, or go down. And the trajectory of grief can either be resilience, okay, that means, quote, "the ability of adults or others in normal circumstances who are exposed to isolation or potentially high disruptive event, such as a severe illness or close death, to maintain a relatively stable, healthy levels of psychological and physical functioning, as well as the capacity for generative experiences and positive emotions," meaning that you're resilient, you're going to bounce back from this, and you're going to go on with life, and you're going to be a good, positive person. Then there's sort of holding stable, recovery, quote, "when a normal functioning temporary gives way to threshold or subthreshold psychopathology, such as symptoms of depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, usually for a period of several months, then gradually returns to pre-event levels." So again, that's part of the depression area, and it comes back. Then there's the sort of chronic dysfunction, prolonged suffering, and inability to function, usually lasting for several years or longer. And then at the very last, there's sort of this little fourth little category, trajectory of grief, where it's called delayed grief or trauma, when the adjustment seems normal, but then the distress symptoms increase months later. Researchers have not found evidence of delayed grief, but delayed trauma appears to be a genuine phenomenon. So all I can say is that good luck with everyone out there with chronic diseases, especially Meniere's. It's just really, really difficult to deal with. Try to cope. I'm going to leave the very last thing. I do recommend that you go on the internet and you join one of these blogging websites. The one I like, and I'm not saying I definitely want to endorse this more than any other, but I do find it very helpful, is the one called DailyStrength.org. I'll put the reference down there if I can. DailyStrength.org, and then type in search for chronic disease in the little search box that says Meniere's disease. And there's actually a very, very good support website blog there. And I like to go on there and I try to offer advice to people who go on there and post questions. So good luck, everyone, and try to cope, get over it, keep a positive attitude, keep searching for a cure or an answer or some kind of relief. Thanks.